This game is just so broken. It's unfinished. It's unpolished. It's unexcusable. I'm going to say this right up front. I hate Redfall. This game sucks so bad, and I'm just so shocked as to why. This is one of the best game studios around today. It's Arkane, the people that made Deathloop, which I gave a 10 out of 10. Games like Prey, games like Dishonored 2. They have such a ridiculously strong catalog, and they decided to force out this wet turd, and I don't think we should just let that slide because, oh man, it's on Game Pass. Let's discuss. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Hey, it's my birthday here in a couple days. Let's see if we can get this video to 5,000 likes, as a nice birthday present to me for suffering through this. Now, I want to break this into 3 separate chunks. We're going to discuss the glitches because my game broke constantly. We're going to discuss the plot, which is actually terrible, and then the gameplay, which at times is halfway decent. Now, the story itself in Redfall is very paper thin. We're playing as one of 4 different heroes that play pretty much the same. And I mean, no matter what, you're just going to be using sniper rifles and shotguns to try and kill people. But here's the big crux. When you're playing Redfall, the idea is that you're playing in this little teeny tiny town that's been completely taken over by magical vampires. There's a bit of a mystery to it where you try and do missions and unlock little cutscenes and stuff showing how these vampires came to be and why they took over this town specifically. But the big part of it is that, honestly, the story is told in the most crappy, low-budget way possible. At the beginning and the end of some of these quests, you get a little bit of plotline advancement told through these weird watercolor paintings. Now, I must admit, I wish we had some sort of actual cool cutscenes, some actual motion, some acting, some animation. This story is already complete freaking dog crap, but the fact that we can't even actually get some acting with it, the fact that it's just like literally a still frame picture saying, oh wow, this is the experiments they did. There's even quests where you go to a movie theater and turn on the projector to watch this like stolen film reel, and you know what it is? It still pops up with just another watercolor picture. This stuff feels so low budget for Arkane. How did you decide to stoop? They cut every corner possible. Now, the plot tries to actually give you this spooky sense that these vampires are dangerous. Our primary goal throughout the course of this game is to kill these vampire gods. There's basically these different tiers of enemy throughout the game. There's random soldiers. 99% of what you fight in this game is just random dudes, just people that decided to team up with the vampires. So most of the time you're just shooting random people with random crappy guns, and then sometimes you'll run into a mid-tier vampire, which is like just random vampires that are floating along that you have to kill with a stake. These guys are still incredibly weak. Sometimes you'll run into these pretty tough mini-bosses like rooks, or the underbosses is what they call this. These are the end of these, like whenever you're clearing out a neighborhood, you have to kill these bigger, stronger guys, and eventually you kill a vampire god. The game is basically broken into these chunks where you're having to constantly work your way up the food chain. But the biggest issue is that none of this stuff is difficult. None of these enemies feel scary, even in pitch black when a weird special magical guy is trying to hunt me down. The AI is pathetic. These enemies are so stupid, you can trick them into walking away from you and exposing their weak point by simply going through a doorway. A lot of times they will forget that you exist. I played as the hero Jacob, who can turn himself invisible. The second I'm invisible, literally the second I'm invisible, they forget I ever existed. So I could kill like 5 guys, become invisible, heal myself, and then snipe the next 10 people. This game is so stupid, and I have no idea why they decided to ship this. So I decided to play the game single player because my friends told me that if you play it co-op, the game is ridiculously short because the enemies are already just so freaking ridiculously dumb that playing it with multiple people, you can mow down everything in a matter of hours. But with that being said, let's talk a bit more about the gameplay itself and what you're going to be doing in Redfall that's just so incredibly boring. So this is, just on the surface, it is a games as a service looter shooter. It's got a content roadmap, it's always online, you can't play this game purely by yourself because no matter what, you still have to be connected to those wonderful Xbox servers. But here's the part of this that's just stupid. When you're playing this, if you try to play co-op, only the main person makes story progression, which means that if I invited a couple subscribers to play with me, you can actually participate in my city, take over neighborhoods, redeem and reduce the amount of total vampires. But when you go back to your game, while you do get to keep the weapons you got from my match, you still have to play through the entire game again, which means if you decided to play this game co-op, there's a good chance you have to beat the entire game twice, once for the host and then once for the secondary party members. That is stupid. But let me talk about the part of this game that actually aggravates me the most. This is a game that has randomized loot, but 99% of the people don't drop anything but bullets. The random soldiers, most of the mid-tier vampires, all they drop is shotgun ammo and rifle ammo, which, okay, that's a good choice, but I feel weird that the only time you're finding stuff is in random backpacks, lockers, different safe zones, which means the actual looting in this game is so spread apart, and these random weapons sure don't feel very random. I got 2 identical legendary shotguns back to back. And you know what? This kind of kills the excitement when it's like, okay, you just keep getting the same items over and over and over again. Now, there is a store you can visit. You can break items down and buy new stuff, but everything at the shops completely blows. The best thing to do in this game is pretty much just force progress, get as far as you can, because where you're at on the map seems to dictate the kind of weapon levels you're going to get. As you fight stronger vampires, the loot in the area, the backpacks and stuff you come across are going to have better loot in them. The shooting itself is decent. When it actually just comes down to the fact that you're trying to pull the trigger and get a headshot, everything works. My biggest issue, though, is the fact that none of these guns are that different. There is a lot of the standard weaponry you would expect. You know, pistols, sniper rifles, stuff like that. But there is also some additional stuff like flare guns. There's a UV light laser beam that lets you just melt vampires and turn them to stone. There's a stake launcher that if you hit most of the weaker vampires will instantly dust them. My issue is the fact that there's really only like 6 different kinds of weapons, and they all feel very, very similar when it comes to the special abilities. These guns have passive bonuses that can proc and do extra damage or more crit or slightly better spread, but they feel the same. A level 5 shotgun feels the exact same as a level 25 shotgun, except for the fact that the numbers go slightly higher. There is never any excitement ever, even when you find the most legendary, crazy, ass-eating laser beam from hell. And that to me is a massive, massive flaw. If looting in your looter shooter is not fun, if it's not exciting, then you have failed. Now, one of the weirdest aspects of this game is the constant escalation. You go from zone to zone of what initially is a rather tiny map, but eventually we get to visit other parts of the city. More beachfront property, more stuff that's more of like more farmland-ish. So you're going to be going through like spooky barns and stuff that aren't really scary at all. But during the course of this, you have to do side quests. Basically, whenever you're actually exploring, you'll find safe houses. And whenever you do, you turn on a little generator, and now whenever you die, you'll respawn there. Now, even if you're very, very good at video games, you're going to die quite a bit in Redfall, simply because a lot of enemies have one-shot kill mechanics. Like if you get hit by one particular ability, you just die. Can't dodge it, can't do anything about it, you just die a lot. But this really isn't that big of a deal, because the second you get dusted, you respawn at the closest safe house, which a lot of times is very, very nearby, and you don't really lose anything for it. In fact, the enemies you killed actually stay dead, so there's even a tactic at times to going in, using all your cooldowns, using all your special abilities, dying, and then just coming back with a full set of ammo and blasting all of them. Basically, the way this works is that whenever you're actually doing the main quest, you're trying to take down one of the vampire gods. Like the first major guy is called the Hollow Man. So you investigate who he is, what his weaknesses are, how you can actually defeat this evil, spooky, undead deity. At a certain point, it just straight up says, okay, it's time to clear out neighborhoods and kill some underbosses to fight the big bad. They have some forced grinding, which here, in a tiny, strange way, I kind of like this. I know a lot of people don't like forced grinding, but here it actually feels a little bit interesting because, I mean, if the point of Redfall is to save the town of Redfall, I do think it makes sense in context of the universe that it would make me go out and divide and conquer to kill even these mid-tier guys and actually save these neighborhoods in order to piss off the main dude enough to go and destroy him. But even while going around the neighborhoods, the game just never feels fun. It always just feels so glitchy and unfinished. I mean, I ran into constant stuff. I mean, frame rate issues, if there's fire nearby, if there's too many enemies on screen. This game, which already runs at 30 frames a second on my Xbox Series X, a lot of times dips down to 20 frames a second. During a lot of the takedowns when stabbing people with a stake, it would randomly just have really bad frame stuttering as it tries to process them being dusted. I encountered about 8 billion different glitches, from menus just not giving me proper information when I'm at the store. I've had times where a menu would pop up for a tutorial and I couldn't close it. Look at this. I could not close my menu. I had to quit the game in order for it to close this menu. How busted is this? But this is just one of like 50 trillion different glitches I encountered, from enemies disappearing, ghostly enemies that are floating through walls that have no health bar, like they're just dead, health bars not working at all. This game is unfinished. Straight up, this game is undone. It's just not complete. And clearly the developers knew that, and that drives me nuts that they just released such an unfinished product and just left it out to die. I had so many different stupid glitches, like quest markers not properly going away, so sometimes on my map it would tell me a destination that I had already finished. Everything about this game is just completely so raw that it drives me nuts. I mean, it kept feeling like I had to reset the game every 30 minutes or an hour to clear out the current batch of glitches so I could prime up a new batch of awful glitches. Sometimes this game does manage to make me smile a bit. One of the mechanics they have in this game that I think is kind of cool is vampire nests. Sometimes while you're exploring the map, you'd find this weird doorway to the vampire dimension. And when you go there, it's a tiny, slightly randomized dungeon. It's got a bunch of guys in a straight line, usually a bunch of big bad vampires. And each of these vampires that you encounter throughout the game, a lot of times they have different special bonuses. They either suck your life out, they make a big cloud of evil black goop, or they have a shield on them. None of these guys are really that dangerous, and they're definitely not scary, but when you're going through this tighter vampire nest, the goal is to beat it as quick as possible to destroy the vampire heart, and then at the end, you get a bunch of piles and piles and piles of loot boxes to open up and get some of the best gear in the game, but you have to escape before the vampire heart dimension collapses. These are kind of fun. They're very boring and monotonous at times when you have to do it to try and level up, but I actually kind of like, because this is where it feels like an Arkane game, when it's not trying to be open world, when it's not trying to focus on co-op and teammates and special abilities, when it's just you and a target trying to sneak past them and destroy stuff as easily as possible. Redfall is a very, very, very bad game. Even if you manage to have fun with it, I don't think anybody should defend this. I think anybody that's trying to act like, hey, this is the next major Xbox masterpiece, you're only doing yourself a disservice. Ask better from Microsoft. They haven't released a AAA game in over a year. This is their first major game since Halo or Flight Simulator or the last Forza in 2021. And this game is getting like a freaking 23 on Metacritic. This is unforgivable. Okay, well, we've heard a lot of bad and a tiny bit of good, but let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Redfall on the Xbox Series X a 3 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Wow, what a bad game. Well, yeah, I'm probably going to do some sort of like birthday stream this weekend, Saturday or Sunday. But I appreciate you guys watching, and I appreciate all the good vibes. I'm going to go lay down and put an ice pack on my head because this game gave me a headache.